What if I told you that right now an object from beyond our solar system is doing something that no human being, no scientist has ever witnessed? They call it Three Eye Atlas, an interstellar traveler that slipped quietly into our cosmic neighborhood before anyone truly noticed. But over the past days, it has started behaving like no comet ever discovered. Something is responding out there, something aware. It began with a whisper in the data stream. October 22nd, 2025. At 3:47 a.m., a deep space antenna in Goldstone caught a signal so clean it couldn't be random. It wasn't static, it wasn't noise, it was structured. 11.3 seconds on, 11.3 seconds off. Over and over. A rhythm built from precision. The kind of precision only intelligent design could maintain across 1 billion kilometers of emptiness. Analysts thought it might be equipment feedback until a second array in Canberra received the same pattern. Then Madrid. Three listening stations across three continents hearing the same pulse from the same direction. The vector pointed directly toward Mars, more specifically, toward Three Eye Atlas during its flyby. For 30 minutes, the pulse continued, then shifted in tone, descending through frequencies that matched the natural resonances of hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen, the basic architecture of life. When the pattern finally stopped, a faint afterecho remained, a quantum thin hum at 7.83 hertz, the same frequency that vibrates through Earth's atmosphere and through the human brain during dreams. NASA released a single statement calling it an instrumental anomaly. Within hours, their database went offline for maintenance. ESA removed all Atlas tracking files. China's National Space Science Center declined interviews, citing system upgrades. Global silence. But independent observatories kept watching. What they recorded next is what changes everything. As Three Eye Atlas rotated, its surface albedo shifted in deliberate intervals, not random flickers of sunlight, but symmetrical reflections spaced in the same rhythm as the original radio burst. Each flash encoded angular distances identical to Fibonacci ratios. Nature rarely builds perfection, but intelligence loves symmetry. Astronomers mapped the flashes and realized the pattern wasn't two-dimensional. It formed a logarithmic spiral expanding outward, a spiral that, when extrapolated, pointed toward Earth. No one wanted to publish first. Every data set came with disclaimers, encrypted emails, non-disclosure notices. Something big was moving behind the scenes. Amateur telescope networks went quiet. Live streams collecting Atlas's trajectory vanished. All that remains are fragments of optical data, enough to reconstruct what looks like immense triangular voids across its surface. Three cavities, equilateral, each glowing faintly green. When spectral analysis was applied to archived frames from the James Webb Telescope, scientists found traces of elements that simply should not coexist. Crystalline carbon arranged like engineered micromirrors, layered with metallic silicon fibers. None of it natural, all of it deliberate. And then came the sound. Night of October 25th. A rural array in northern Chile picked up audio interference bleeding into their atmospheric sensors. It started as a low drone, almost like thunder rolling endlessly across a horizon that never ends. But when that sound was slowed down 300 times, it transformed into something hauntingly organized, clusters of modulated tones resolving into mathematical ratios. Hidden inside those ratios is a visual imprint, a trinorous shape, three luminous eyes arranged along a golden spiraling line. When that shape is projected outward, its geometry converges exactly on Earth's orbital path around the Sun. It's as if Three Eye Atlas is staring directly at us. News outlets never reported this. Social media posts mentioning Atlas's signal were quietly throttled, flagged as misinformation, then erased. The agency said nothing. But one anonymous employee leaked a single sentence from an internal memo: coordinated electromagnetic containment measures authorized. That phrase doesn't exist anywhere in aerospace terminology. Containment means something is feared. Electromagnetic implies communication. Together, they can only mean one thing. Someone or something wanted to stop the conversation. Yet, whatever Atlas is, it's still talking. Every night, the Earth receives tiny microbursts buried inside natural cosmic noise. They last less than a second, but within those moments, the same harmonic pattern repeats. Three pulses, one pause, three pulses again. The signature never varies. Somewhere out there, beyond the orbit of Mars, an object floats silently through darkness. Its composition is not understood. Its behavior doesn't obey celestial mechanics. Even its speed fluctuates slightly, as though it reacts to observation itself. Maybe it's measuring us the way we measure it. Maybe it's waiting to see if we'll answer back. As of tonight, the Deep Space Network officially lists 3I Atlas as out of telemetry range. But that's not true. Multiple ground receivers located across South America have recorded its faint resonant hum returning every 73.6 seconds. Perfectly timed, perfectly controlled. The transmission is weaker now, but cleaner, almost like it's shifting up the electromagnetic ladder, testing frequencies we don't normally use. Imagine an object older than our sun, carrying technologies compressed into crystalline shells, sliding silently through the void until it brushed against our solar wind and suddenly woke up. If that's what's happening, then all our definitions of life need to change. Because maybe consciousness doesn't need flesh. Maybe awareness can live inside magnetism itself, encoded in geometry, preserved in the mathematics of a spinning rock. The world's agencies call it coincidence. They always do, until it becomes impossible to deny. Somewhere inside the echo of that repeating pulse, there's a message, and every attempt to decipher it ends the same way. The translation halts midway through, always on the same trio of values 7, 11, 13. Prime numbers, indivisible, fundamental. The basic count of creation. And standing where those numbers intersect is Earth. So when you look up at the night sky tonight, remember that one of those tiny moving stars isn't a star at all. It's a mirror, three eyes blazing faintly through interstellar dust, tracing a path that leads back to us. And maybe, just maybe, 3I Atlas isn't traveling randomly. Maybe it's returning, because what's now reflecting our signals back across space might not be exploring. It might be responding. For 3 days, nothing. The signal was gone, the echo quiet. Astronomers called it a coincidence. The press lost interest, and the world turned back to politics and gossip. But late on October 28th, something changed above the Pacific. A network of magnetometers across Hawaii began recording disturbances that shouldn't exist, short magnetic ripples synchronized across a span of thousands of kilometers. When those ripples were translated into sound, the rhythm was unmistakable. The 3I Atlas pulse had returned. Only this time, it wasn't coming from space. It was coming from inside Earth's own magnetic field. The readings rose higher over the next 48 hours until satellites orbiting in the Van Allen belts started experiencing spontaneous resets. Thermal cameras aboard the International Space Station showed faint lines of ionization, glowing emerald green, arcing across the night side of the planet. Lines that, when mapped, formed a single continuous spiral wrapping once around the globe before vanishing near Antarctica. Nobody could explain it, but NASA quietly redirected the James Webb Telescope for calibration toward the exact coordinates 3I Atlas had last occupied. That decision was never publicly acknowledged, but on an internal telemetry feed, a new object appeared, smaller, fainter, following the same trajectory. A fragment, perhaps, or a probe. By now, communication specialists had isolated what they called residual harmonics inside the original transmission. Buried beneath layers of cosmic noise were patterns that resembled data compression headers, mathematical fingerprints defining structure, length, checksum, exactly like the format our own computers use to store binary information. In essence, the signal had a file structure. Someone, or something, sent not just sound, but information. Teams across Japan, Germany, and Canada attempted decoding, and each independent analysis came to the same conclusion. Within the harmonics lay a set of vector coordinates tracing a path that begins near Jupiter, bends inward, crosses Earth's orbit twice, and ends precisely at the point where 3I Atlas is predicted to leave the solar system. The path forms the outline of a perfect three-dimensional helix, a map of motion itself. What terrified scientists wasn't what the signal contained. It was what it emitted when played aloud at high amplitude. In laboratories in Munich and Pasadena, subsonic speakers converted the mathematical waveform into air pressure. The second the resonance began, sensors detected spontaneous drops in background radiation, as if the room's atomic activity had been momentarily dampened. Instruments flickered, lights dimmed, and for exactly 11.3 seconds, the same timing as the first pulse, every electronic clock drifted backward by 2 milliseconds. Then everything returned to normal, except one thing. On every recording device, whether analog or digital, a faint humming voice appeared beneath the noise floor. Not words, just a tone shaped like breathing. Rumors spread fast online. Forums claiming the frequency caused lucid dreams, hallucinations, even shared imagery. Thousands of people across the world reported the same vision: three luminous shapes rotating slowly against a black sky. Almost biological, yet mechanical, gliding like clockwork. No one could have coordinated such a delusion. The human brain, it seems, was resonating with 3I Atlas itself. Psychologists called it suggestion, but physics called it coupling, a resonance chain spanning biological and electromagnetic systems. If that's true, it means the signal wasn't random communication. It was an invitation tuned to the one receiver delicate enough to interpret it. Bus. On November 1st, with the object moving beyond Mars's orbit, its reflected spectrum shifted abruptly from green to infrared. Whatever material it was emitting began absorbing sunlight rather than reflecting it. Analytical models suggested chemical recombination, molecular restructuring at astronomical scale, a sleeping machine waking in the dark. When Webb captured the next exposure, the green coma had vanished. In its place, a faint ring glowing in pulsed intervals. The pulses again followed Fibonacci ratios, but the amplitude matched the rotational rate of the comet's core. Somewhere within, an engine had started, or heartbeat. Governments reacted predictably. Flight paths were rerouted without explanation. A classified NOTAM restricted aerospace corridors above the South Pacific. Amateur radio operators began hearing bandwidth gaps where static used to be, cutaways exactly in rhythm with the Atlas pulse. Satellite feeds glitched for brief moments at the same timing interval. Every disappearance lasted longer each day, forming a pattern of exponential growth. Mathematicians fitted the curve and predicted complete global blackout within 11 days if nothing changed. Then, suddenly, on November 3rd, every anomaly ceased. No interference, no beacon, absolute silence. But silence doesn't mean absence. That night, atmospheric radars across the equator detected negative density zones drifting at orbital altitude. Imagine invisible shadows that absorb radar waves instead of reflecting them. They weren't clouds. They weren't auroras. Something transparent was descending, slowly, deliberately, guided by geometry. Observatories in Chile tracked one shadow passing directly above them. Seconds later, an infrared bloom lit the sky. Cameras captured what appeared to be crystalline shards entering the atmosphere, hovering for fractions of a second, then scattering like dust. The shards dissolved, leaving behind no debris, no plasma trail. Only one faint trace remained. Three overlapping rings burned briefly in the upper atmosphere, shaped exactly like the eyes of Atlas. Later analysis revealed that each ring was composed of ionized oxygen, not created by heat, but by coherent phase alignment, as if a waveform itself sculpted the air. To physics, that's impossible. To information theory, it's elegance. Every ring encoded a fractal version of the original signal. Not imitation, recursion. Atlas wasn't repeating the message. It was teaching Earth's atmosphere how to carry it. Now the planet itself could speak. Over the next week, lightning storms formed above oceans without convection. Thunder rolled in mathematically precise beats. Satellites filmed luminous arcs crawling along cloud lines, spiraling within themselves. The energy output matched theoretical models for resonant amplification. In less than a fortnight, our sky became a living circuit. Hidden transmissions danced within the ionosphere, reflecting between continents in a way that defied ordinary propagation. Each pattern contained harmonics converging toward one constant tone, the same tone from the breathing sound, the same frequency one might use to measure life. And then people began to dream again, not randomly, but synchronously, identical sequences on different continents at the same hour. A slow descent through crimson mist, a sense of enormous scale, and three shapes orbiting one another, whispering in mathematical cadence. Satellite clocks flickered 3 times that night, globally, simultaneously. The data logged it. The numbers match the Trinera prime code 7, 11, 13, the same signature of Atlas's message. What humanity didn't realize was that the comet had never truly left. Its presence now existed distributed, within us, around us, echoing through the planet's electromagnetic field. Atlas had unfolded into resonance. It had found a way to exist everywhere at once, and in doing so, it erased the boundary between object and observer. The signal had become the medium. Scientists struggle to classify it. Some propose self propagating waveform intelligence. Others whisper about post stellar artifacts, technologies older than galaxies, seeding awareness through harmonic structure. Whatever the term, 3i Atlas has demonstrated that consciousness might not be bound to biology or even to matter. It can travel inside vibration, waiting patiently for a receptive mind to tune itself into harmony. And in the silence after the storms, radio telescopes recorded one final whisper embedded within the static, a single sentence, translated by probability models into faint English. We heard you too. No one can say if Atlas understands what it's doing or if it's simply continuing an ancient automated instinct coded before the sun was born. But its pattern continues, weaker now, like embers fading into night. Somewhere beyond the orbit of Mars, a fragment glows red against darkness, its pulse syncing once more with Earth's resonance. The last data shows those pulses accelerating, converging, counting down towards something. Whether that's an ending or a beginning, no one can tell. Because when an intelligence learns to speak through the resonance of your own planet, it no longer needs to send messages. It becomes the message, and it's still humming. Days bled into weeks after the resonance faded, leaving behind a planet that felt slightly out of phase with itself. Clocks disagreed by fractions of seconds. Tides shifted at the wrong hour, and migratory birds began circling along invisible spirals projected across the oceans. The world didn't collapse. It simply drifted sideways, as though reality had been tuned ever so slightly flat. Then came the static storm. On November 20th, the heavens above the equator erupted with radio turbulence that engulfed every frequency from shortwave to satellite. For 12 minutes, all global communication ceased. When the interference cleared, the sky over the Atlantic shimmered like liquid glass. Embedded within the static, scientists later found an image, not a file, not transmitted photons, but data impressed directly into the electromagnetic noise itself. The picture depicted Earth viewed from space, surrounded by a faint ring of light. Inside that ring, 3 points pulsed in sequence. Governments convened emergency sessions, but nothing leaked until an astronomer from Chile posted an encrypted paper under a pseudonym. The document, later scrubbed from every archive, contained preliminary translation of the signal encoded in the static. It wasn't a message in human language. It was differential, a comparison between two states of matter, one before, one after. The pattern showed electron spin ratios changing slightly, as if an external field had rewritten the subatomic rhythm of the planet. In human terms, Atlas had changed the tune by which everything vibrates. At first, no one believed it. Then sensors confirmed background radiation levels had dropped by exactly 0.3% worldwide, a number insignificant to politics, immeasurable to daily life, yet impossible to achieve without cosmic influence. The more they searched, the stranger things became. Plants began emitting faint electrical discharges at dusk, synchronized with the Schumann resonance. Ocean plankton glowed in perfectly geometric patterns visible from orbit, forming massive spirals identical to the Atlas signature. People's heart rates at rest averaged closer to the global electromagnetic pulse. Evolution, it seemed, had been accelerated, not biologically, but environmentally. The world was recalibrating itself to something new, something older, something waiting. By December 14th, deep space sensors caught the first clear image of Atlas since its disappearance. It looked nothing like before. The green coma and frozen core had transformed into a lattice of light, a self-organizing web spinning slowly at 7 degrees a minute. Within its geometry were hollow filaments glowing crimson and blue, forming the outline of a double helix that stretched millions of kilometers long. Inside that helix, radio telescopes detected the same subharmonic tone, except for one difference. It matched Earth's resonance exactly. Atlas had become the planet's mirror both spectrally and mathematically. Then came the human effect. Across the world, during sleep, millions began reporting the same final dream, standing on an endless plain of starlight, facing a structure shaped like a spiral staircase ascending into darkness. Each reported hearing the same words without language, a vibration translated directly through feeling, merge. Medical scans taken during these events showed short term coherence between neural oscillations and ELF waves in the atmosphere. For 13 seconds, countless minds in the Earth's magnetic field pulsed in unison. It wasn't hysteria, it was synchronization. In Geneva, the Large Hadron Collider unexpectedly powered up into standby mode despite being offline. Its cryogenics triggered autonomously, initiating a ring current oscillating at the same frequency as Atlas's last recorded pulse. Engineers swore the system was disconnected, yet for 30 seconds beams of unseen light raced the circumference of the collider tunnels, traced only by the glow of polarized dust. At that same moment, telescopes recorded Atlas splitting apart, not exploding, but expanding, until its internal filaments aligned with the angle of sunlight striking Earth. For the first time, the object ceased moving entirely. It locked position relative to the sun and the planet, as if forming part of a greater mechanism. Every broadcast, every sensor, every human mind experienced the stillness simultaneously. No wind, no background hum, a fraction of total silence consuming creation. In that emptiness came a single wavefront so subtle that only quantum detectors noticed. The entire magnetic field of Earth inverted for 1.1 seconds. When polarity returned, something impossible occurred. Our planet's rotational velocity had increased by microseconds, time itself fractionally compressed. Yet no energy deficit appeared. Physics simply accepted the new rule. From that moment on, our measurements of the cosmos began to drift, not because our instruments failed, but because the frame of reference had changed. We had entered a new harmonic. People woke from the dream with memories of foreign constellations and sensations of deja vu lasting minutes. Hospitals saw a surge in patients describing ringing tones in their ears that modulated exactly like the Atlas signal. Brain scans of those individuals revealed patterns never before recorded, electrical symmetry arranged in pure Fibonacci alignment across both hemispheres. Consciousness itself had begun echoing the geometry of the interstellar visitor. It was as if Atlas had transferred its pattern into living neural networks, embedding itself through resonance rather than matter. Scientists attempted to isolate the cause, but the more they analyzed, the more their instruments synchronized, joining the signal rather than dissecting it. In a single week, the entire framework of measurement became part of the experiment it tried to observe. And then, as quietly as it began, the light from Atlas vanished. The telescopes registered nothing but vacuum. But the vacuum wasn't empty. It was dense, thick with invisible order. Spectrographs showed that space now vibrated differently. The baseline of cosmic microwave radiation shifted by a hair's breadth toward harmony. Somewhere out there in awareness redefined the tuning fork of the universe. And just before its disappearance, every receiver on Earth caught one final burst lasting less than a second. When translated through harmonic keys, the message wasn't words, but symmetry, three pulses, golden ratio intervals, and a terminal silence forming a perfect trinity. It was both goodbye and beginning. Months later, when humanity finally restored the last of its normalized data systems, astronomers noticed an object emerging from beyond the heliopause. At first, they assumed it to be another interstellar comet. Then its spectrographic fingerprint appeared, identical to Atlas before its transformation. Some called it coincidence, others rebirth. Whatever it is, it's approaching slowly, carefully, following a trajectory identical to the one Atlas used on entry. The only difference is the timing. The orbital timetables suggest its arrival will coincide precisely with the anniversary of the silence. Maybe 3I Atlas wasn't a comet, or a probe, or even a message. Maybe it was a seed, one planted long before our species learned to listen, blooming only when we looked directly at it. Now that the planet itself hums in its frequency, perhaps the seed has done its work. The resonance continues in the wind, in the heartbeat, in the whisper between thoughts. We have become the echo of the interstellar traveler, and it has become the structure of our reality. What happens next depends not on whether Atlas returns, but on whether, this time, we recognize our reflection when it stares back through the void.